here with a very special guest who's going to introduce some really amazing information and information that she has personally gathered and witnessed and shared videos of, which I will post the links to. Her name is Christie Hutcherson. She is the CEO and founder of Women Fighting for America, WFFA.WIN, WIN. Christie is dedicated to defend America from its founding roots. She's been fighting on the border for over 2 years, bringing truth around the national security threat while exposing the activity of the cartels, protecting the lives of those being trafficked, and bringing awareness to the fentanyl crisis, which has dramatically impacted places like Portland that we talk about every night. Christie is dedicated to being a voice of truth for the American people to save the soul of our nation. And we have been witnessing every day how that's even more necessary. Thank you for joining us here tonight, Christie, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
So, this is interesting because fentanyl is, everybody talks about it, but they treat it like in Portland, when they talk about homelessness, they treat it like the weather. Everybody talks about it. Nobody does anything about it, but it has a cause. And you've been down there at the border witnessing what's happening. And I think it's also taken on a new level of seriousness as you have discovered some of the things that you have discovered and shared videos of that relate to national security, things that have been dismissed in the past as, oh, don't worry about that. That's not why. It's just poor migrants trying to come up to the border and find a new life. What have you found in your experiences there on the border?
Well, first, thank you, Kevin, for having me on your show. The border situation, it's not just a new thing that's been sounding the alarm from a national security perspective. Everyone wants to hone in and focus in on the immigration part. Immigration, illegals, that is one very small part of what open border policies of open borders does to the American people. For 2 years now, 2+ years, I've personally been on the border, not only just the border in one particular sector. Me and my team have traveled pretty much almost all 3,000 miles of southern border. We haven't just stayed actually at the southern border. We have a northern border as well. Our northern border is being breached every single day. It's just not being focused on. And we're going to hone in on both of those areas today. Fentanyl is a huge problem at the borders. As we know, we've had drug issues with the cartels bringing in drugs, all sorts of types of drugs for decades and decades. That is nothing new. But what is new, because of the policies of this administration, we have seen unprecedented amounts of drugs flowing into our nation, specifically fentanyl and carfentanil. If your listeners don't truly understand what fentanyl and carfentanil is, it is extremely deadly. It is very cheap for the cartels to get their hands on. So the Chinese Communist Party, yes, China, the CPP, they provide the synthetics, right? This is a drug that has to be man-made. So they provide, but them in Asia, some other smaller countries, provide the material to the drug cartels, to the drug lords, to these entities, these business organizations, criminal organizations. And they take that material and they make fentanyl out of it and carfentanil out of it. Carfentanil is 50 times more powerful than fentanyl is. Fentanyl does not have to be ingested. It doesn't have to be smoked. All you have to do is touch fentanyl or breathe fentanyl in, and within seconds, you are in cardiac arrest, and within a minute, you're dead. If you do not have Narcan, an intervention to reverse the action of fentanyl and carfentanil. That's how deadly it is.
Wow. Yeah, I had not heard the term carfentanil, but I knew that China is the source of the chemical precursors that are then combined to create this and manufacture it in Mexico. And I've repeatedly heard what's going on with fentanyl described as a national security threat. And if you just take the number of people that are dying from fentanyl, and I also have heard that crystal meth, the current version of it, which is much stronger than the version that existed 10 years ago when many states went around banning the, I believe it was pseudoephedrine decongestant, which was being used by people to manufacture a prior version of meth in their basements. But now the one that's produced in Mexico is way worse. Again, chemical precursors, I believe, are coming in from places like China. And yet it's treated as if it's a problem that they don't plan to do anything about. And you know, when you talk about people coming to the border, there's drug mules, right? There's people that are like volunteering and giving themselves over to border agents, but the people that are trying to smuggle this stuff in, especially en masse, they're not the ones going up to border agents and saying, you know, I'm just here because I'm poor and I want to get a job and improve the life of my family. These are the gotaways, or the people who are finding other ways into the country, aren't they? And it's a tremendous volume of people now that they are so burdened dealing with all the people that just volunteer themselves at the border.
There's a lot to unpack there. So we're going to break this down into silos because it's easier for the American people to understand all of the different areas that are threatening the very existence of the United States of America, basically destabilizing our country. So carfentanil and fentanyl, first and foremost, almost whether it's cocaine or marijuana, ecstasy, whatever drugs you're thinking of. So the drug cartels, first and foremost, are taking the fentanyl or the carfentanil and they use that and they mix it into these drugs. That's why you're seeing unprecedented amounts of deaths, overdoses. And yes, it is a poison. I was reading one of your listeners. It is a poison. And they're overdosing because there's no regulatory anything oversight, right? So the cartels are just mixing this stuff in their own labs. And unfortunately, sometimes and mostly it's purposefully done to overdose you. Back in March of this past year, fentanyl and carfentanil is not just a problem from an overdose perspective, right? A poisoning of American citizens. It is a national security threat. And I'm going to explain that really quick. And then I want to move on to a couple of other national security issues that are extremely important for the American people to understand, and we deserve answers to. So if you take sweet and low, okay, because everybody understands what a sweet and low packet or a small little sugar packet looks like. Now, back in March of this past year, I was invited, me and my team, my organization, to the capital of Arizona. I was asked to brief 20 something plus sheriff. I think there was around 27 sheriffs in the room. There were lawmakers, senators, state legislators, the AG's office, and of course the governor's office. And one of the things that we are discussing in this briefing, among others, that we have the solutions, me and my team actually have solutions to stop everything, whether it's trafficking, sex trafficking, drug flow, terrorists, whatever. And we are briefing them on that. But one of the things that I said, I want you to take this sweet and low packet and I want you to pour it in the palm of your hand. And now I want you to imagine that little bit of substance is enough to kill every single person in this Capitol building right now. That little bit of fentanyl is enough to kill everybody. Now I want you to imagine this in the hands of the terrorists that we know for a fact are now into our country because of the policies of this administration. Now, terrorists are going to get a hold of this fentanyl, and it's now being brought over not only in powder form, pill form, but in liquid form. Imagine you're sitting at your child's football, baseball, basketball game, fill in the blank. Imagine you're grocery shopping. Imagine you're in a shopping mall. Imagine you're at a gas pump and you touch the gas pump. Fentanyl can literally be put on any possible surface or in air, and it will kill millions of Americans. Millions of Americans. That is a national security threat. That is a bioweapon of mass destruction that now can be used with not only enemies, but terrorists and other entities inside the United States against the American population. That should keep every single American up every single night, because I know it does me.
Well, it's fascinating because the former top guy at the Drug Enforcement Administration totally agrees with you. And he said that he's warning that China is actually using the Mexican drug cartels to traffic this fentanyl as part of a larger unrestricted warfare strategy to kill off America's next generation. This is somebody who actually really does know what they're talking about. And when it comes to drug enforcement operations, and it's amazed. Why isn't the president actually immediately holding meetings and trying to figure out how to stop a chemical biological attack effectively on the United States, whose source is China coming through the southern border? Why
I'm
not?
going to answer that question directly. When you look at things, what actions, not what they say, but actions, what's going on. And there's a lot of actions that this administration has taken to show you exactly what their actual true goal is, not only against the American people, but against the Constitution and our sovereignty as a nation. This is purposeful. They are not ignorant. They are not stupid. They understand exactly this is willful, purposeful intent. Willful, purposeful intent. You cannot surmise anything else. If you look at the policies, even yesterday when Biden decided to finally, after 38, 40 years in office, to actually head to the border. He chose El Paso. It was sanitized. This was nothing but a political stunt so they could do a check in their box. El Paso, the mayor, all of them, shame on you. You had your city cleaned up, and they were not really seeing anything of what truly is going on the ground there in El Paso, Texas. Nor did he meet with anybody who truly are on the front lines, including the congressman who happens to have that district, right? You would think that that would be somebody that they would want to meet with. Instead, he met with sympathizers, NGO heads who are making millions and millions and millions of dollars off the backs of the tax-paying citizens through all of these processing and bringing in and intaking all of these illegals and dispersing them throughout the United States of America. And also basically a big, in my opinion, money laundering scheme. So we have an administration who clearly wants to completely destabilize America, not only through the drug trade, but also through millions of illegals coming over this border, and they are illegals. Make no mistake, 175 plus different nations have entered our country illegally. 98 plus that we know of that they've told us the truth from. My sources say something completely different. From the terrorist watch list that are now, not only did they arrest those, but think about all of the getaways that you guys hear of. You do hear sometimes people talking about the gotaways. I'm here to tell you, 2 years of my work on the border, interviewing law enforcement, Border Patrol, ICE, DHS, U.S. Marshals, also looking at private cameras set up throughout the whole entire border, looking at this data, running the numbers. We are really, in reality, somewhere between the 10 to 18 million mark who have actually influxed into our nation under this regime, because nobody's thinking about the northern border. Nobody talks about how they're coming in through what? Our maritime, right? We have a West Coast and we have an East Coast. Those are borders of the United States as well. So when you look at the big holistic picture, like I do from a strategy perspective, we're in a lot of trouble, America.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that what we have is when somebody signals that they're just not interested in border enforcement or protecting the country's borders, all the borders are easily breached. The northern border probably easier than the southern border, and as you said, sailing a little ship over to an abandoned part of a beach and having a rendezvous with a few cars or passenger vans, and boom, a bunch of people are in the country. There's many people, as you said, that know that the gotaways are just a calculation. They don't actually know how many got away. They just estimate, right? Because the gotaways are the ones they didn't get. It's crazy. Now, according to let's see, Just the News posted a story here. It says Biden skips border meeting with local residents and decided not to meet with the people who are actually are being overrun by the migrants that are coming to the border. And that's the people who are overrunning the border that they identify, right? And then there's the gotaways, as we were just talking about. I guess we just don't actually have anybody looking out to protect the border who has the legal authority to do so and is armed. I mean, this is extremely troubling at this point.
When you have literally a transnational terrorist organizations running and controlling the border of the United States of America, there's a problem in America. Those transnational terrorism organizations are the cartels. Every single person who comes over the border, 100%, not even one person would slip through the cracks. They are paying the cartel money. Even those who are saying they're not, they're afraid because they didn't have the funds to pay the actual piper, the actual ticket price that they need. So what they have to do is now they're indebted to the cartel, and they have to work that off in a couple different areas. They either have to do either the sex trade industry, the labor trade industry, there's something that, or the drug trade industry, that they have to literally work this off. Well, they are never going to work it off. They will be enslaved forever. And people say, well, Christie, once they're over here in America and they're safe, and let's just say we got them all the way to Indiana or Michigan, right? They're never safe, because let me tell you about the drug cartel's reach. America, every single state and in almost every single city, I don't care if you live in a small farm town or if you live in a huge big city, there is a drug cartel operation set up. There are arms and tentacles everywhere. For example, Calumet Farms is one of the most prestigious horse racing farms in the world. Calumet Farms out of Lexington, Kentucky. You would think that there wouldn't be any big, huge drug operations going on there. They use fronts. One of the head of one of the worst cartels, the New Generation Cartel, had a member. He was a barn hand, right? He was a barn hand working at Calumet Farms. That was his cover. All the while, he was running a very sophisticated drug and human trafficking operation. He happened to have gotten caught and got arrested. He is one of many stories I'm telling you throughout the United States. Their arm, their reach is everywhere. You are not safe in America as long as we have these transnational terrorists over in Mexico. Look what they're doing right now. Over 30 people have been killed. The Mexican police right now are under siege because of the cartels. They are on our borders. Not only are they on our borders, they've infiltrated our country. And I'm going to show a photograph to your listeners right now. This is live photographs of my team. This isn't my team. We are intercepting these guys. These are cartel members bringing in and sneaking in individuals into our country. This is where we call the no man's land. This is where there's no law enforcement, no border patrol, satellite phones only. Me and my team, we suit up at the risk of our own lives. We go in and we do very covert operations, not only to get these pictures and photographs and the video to prove to America how dangerous and how unprotected we are under this administration, but we also, if we come in contact with these individuals, we will stop them and we will apprehend them at all costs and protect our borders when we have a federal government who refuses to do so.
Yeah, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion about whether states could actually declare this an invasion and defend themselves. I hope they get around to that at some point, but unfortunately, we have some poor political leadership, particularly now coming into power in Arizona. It's going to be open season on that state, and right below, just south of us, is the country of Mexico. I believe that we refer to it as the Brandon administration here, but the Brandon administration has probably destabilized Mexico, because a friend of our program here, Chuck Holton, is actually down and been in the cities in northern Mexico, and there's a full-on war going on because the Mexican government actually is losing the war to the cartels. It's like a narco state in a state of civil war that's falling apart. All law and order is falling apart, and they're directing all of their efforts north, where we have no border effectively. It is so, but that's in your video. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead to something here, but in the video that you put out where you were showing what was going on, you were talking on one of the news programs, and you mentioned about the fact that they're finding people that are part of the Al-Quds force.
The cuts.
From the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and that they are setting up operations south of the U.S. border to create effectively like militant forces, and they actually know that these people are starting to operate across our border. There's a real concern about that, and of course, you mentioned about the tunnels. That's what you would do. You wouldn't turn yourself into a border agent and say, "Hey, I'm with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. I'm just here because I want a better job." You wouldn't want to get caught, right?
So let me unpack this because this is breaking news, and not one single national news outlet, including Fox, Tucker Carlson, nobody has contacted me on this story. Even if they don't want to contact me on this story, heck, go down to this sector where we broke this story live 3 weeks ago when me and my team were down doing another operation in a documentary at the border. There are tunnels all over the southern border. We know this. This has gone on for years, right? We've found tunnels, we've blown up tunnels, we've collapsed tunnels. What is unique about this? And this is why this is breaking news. The particular tunnel that I'm talking about that was just now literally just discovered. Not only is it the biggest, longest, it is the most sophisticated tunnel that, to our knowledge, that was discovered. I was with the police chief of this particular sector. He's become a friend of mine because of the work I do at the border. I was with him. We came upon this area, and there was a lot of activity going on in this particular area. This area is a heavily trafficked area by our law enforcement and border patrol agents, ICE, DHS. It's a sector that's well traveled. And if your listeners don't understand what the border is all about, I'm going to kind of explain this to you. There is a wall, and there is a tunnel right there. You can click on that link after this show and go watch this. I kept saying I was going to wait till our documentary, but I honestly decided this was too important to wait till our documentary comes out in April. The American people deserve to know this. So this tunnel is numerous football fields long, right? Starting in Mexico, coming over into the United States of America. It goes across the street under a residential community. It takes a left-hand turn, and this tunnel comes up inside of an actual home. We call these homes typically stash houses. That's kind of our staging houses, right? What is also unique about this tunnel? This tunnel has reinforced walls and ceilings. This tunnel has fiber optics, electricity, water, rail system, everything possible inside, sensors, all of that stuff. This tunnel is 25 feet deep underneath the ground. It's 5 by 5. This tunnel goes literally underneath a heavily trafficked wall that opens up. There's a gate that opens up, and the cars drive in and out, the border patrol agents, in a 60-foot berm in between. My team that I work with, I have a very interesting background, but the Kennedy International Security and Logistics, that company that I work with, they are highly skilled in very numerous different areas. They're international. I'm very blessed to have them on my team. One of the things that they understand is tunnel systems, mining, etc. So looking at the sophistication of this tunnel, looking at what it would take to actually build this tunnel, and how much dirt and vibration would be involved. It is our conclusion, and I haven't vetted this, but I'm going to tell you right now, it is our conclusion that there is no way that this tunnel was built without somebody within our own side, our federal agencies and our government did not know this tunnel existed. When we were down there, and you'll see on this film footage, at that time, the Washington sent in a very special division of Homeland Security. We were told there were scientists and 3-letter agencies descending on this tunnel. They had set up a perimeter, a small little gate, and then a building. And inside that bit, there was a door. And when you walked into that door, there was an access point down 25 feet into the tunnel. And they were studying this. My question is, were they studying it, or what were they trying to hide and cover up? Is my question. This tunnel, so when I see stuff like this, Kevin, my brain switches to, okay, we need to figure out what's going on here. And then also 3.5 hours from this location, we found another active tunnel that they were also looking at on another sector of the border. Again, heavily laden drug cartel area. I looked at some policies and stuff in Central and South America and Mexico that this administration would have enacted over the last 6-7 months. One of those that piqued my interest was his willingness to partner with and do business with the devil himself, which is the president of Venezuela, who's a communist nation. Venezuela takes money from Iran, who, by the way, also funds Hamas and all of these other terrorist organizations, Death to America.
Yeah.
So then I started looking at airspace and activity for the last 6 to 8 months. I started looking at shipping routes, shipping, who's been coming and going out of ports, specifically in Central South America, Mexico. Lo and behold, I find out that back in June and July of this past year, there's a small little story that got buried deep because we don't have any news organizations worth their salt anymore who do any kind of work or journalism. So that's what Women Fighting for America does, one of the many things. So there was a plane and an airline. This particular airline is on the United States sanctions list, and I made notes because I want to make sure the American people understand what I'm talking about here. This was an Iranian jet, and this jet took off from Tehran. It ended up going into Cuba, then into Mexico, where it supposedly had auto parts on it. That was what was deemed on the cargo as auto parts. This plane then took off and it went to Caracas, Venezuela. It landed in Caracas, Venezuela, where it picked up several more passengers. Then this aircraft landed in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And the only reason why we even know anything about this plane that landed with these individuals and why we know who was on this aircraft, because we had a brave person by the name of Geraldo Millman. He was a former head of criminal intelligence in the Ministry of Security and now an opposition congressman against the president and vice president of Argentina. What was on this plane in reality were 14 Venezuelans and 5 Iranians. Why is that significant? The individual who was flying this aircraft, who was the pilot of this plane out of Iran, by the way, U.S. sanctioned, okay, was twofold. He was one of the board members of this U.S. sanctioned Iranian air company. Also, he was a senior member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, aka in charge of the Quds forces. So what also was actually on that plane, it wasn't auto parts. What was on that plane?
Yeah, I was going to laugh because who gets their auto parts from Iran? Seriously. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So what was actually on this plane was massive amounts of cyber intelligence equipment and capabilities to spy cyber stuff. Why were they flying to Mexico? Why were they flying to Venezuela and then also Argentina? Argentina, by the way, has a huge stronghold and allegiance with who? China, because China gives a lot of financial influence for infrastructure and food supply into these countries.
Yeah, they do a lot of debt diplomacy down there. And now they got Brazil too, right?
Brazil, they have Brazil, they have Belize, a lot of places, Central Nicaragua. And by the way, Nicaragua now has more Russian military presence than ever before, along with military grade equipment, because Putin re-signed an agreement back in the spring of this past year with Nicaragua to bring in more equipment under the disguise of training exercises. So when I see all of this activity, then we have ground intelligence in Mexico. What were they doing in Mexico? That we believe they landed in Mexico because our intel tells us that the Quds forces have partnered with the cartels, different cartel organizations, to set up training facilities and training camps to train military and militias. These tunnels coming into the United States of America can be 100% utilized to not only bring in terrorists, but it can also bring in, think about this, dirty bombs, the nuclear bombs, equipment to make that, military grade equipment. These tunnels also can be used to smuggle out stuff to these organizations. This concerns me, and I'm going to tell you right now, every single American who is listening to my voice right now, you need to contact your congressman and you need to tell them to get a hold of either this tunnel information, our videos, get a hold of my organization, but you need to ask them questions. We deserve answers, and we need to hold the Biden administration accountable for what they're doing and what they're not doing at our southern border. And by the way, the northern border, because we know there's tunnels there as well. And I cannot wait to peel back and find out and go do operations up there and start bringing you, the American people, some more truth.
I was gonna say, and the ones at the northern border, they probably don't have to dig as deep. But I almost laughed. I have to laugh, or else I'd cry. That President Brandon decided to go to visit the southern border, and he visits a place where there's a wall that he said was racist and condemned while he was running for president. And now that's the only place he'll go anywhere near. And then, as you said, it's kind of a phony visit because he actually skipped the areas that are being overrun by migrants. And he certainly didn't go and tour the underground tunnels that they're finding. I noticed in the video, I believe it was one of the videos, and I don't remember which one it was, but I think it was the one that's on the WFFA.win website, and I posted that one. When you discovered the tunnel, you had to stay at a certain distance away because people were warning you to stay back for national security reasons. Now, what danger is there in having anybody that's trying to gain insight into what's going on, journalists, anybody, from getting a closer look at a tunnel whose danger is not posed by the journalists or to the journalists, but to the United States because of what's coming through that tunnel? And it's clearly an effort, as you were suggesting earlier, to cover this up and make it go away because it's embarrassing, especially around the time that President Brandon's decided to go visit the southern border. And I heard that President Brandon went to suddenly visit the southern border because he's actually thinking on running for re-election, which is humorous, but he's also really angry, like dropping F-bombs in meetings in the White House because he's angry that things have gotten so out of control at the southern border. The migrant thing has been going on for the better part of 2 years. I do not believe there's any realistic way that he is angry about something that's been going on like that, unrelenting and even getting worse for 2 years, and that his administration has enabled it. He must be angry about suddenly discovering that they're so incompetent that they might be letting terrorists into the country at this point. What else could it be? Why would he be angry?
I think it's just acting. They know that having these type of policies are inviting the worst of the worst, right? Our enemies into our nation. They know this. You have to understand, first and foremost, Biden has been in the swamp for what, 37, 38, 40 something years. They understand. He was the vice president. This isn't something that these people do not understand. They understand that the policies that they have in place right now are endangering the lives of Americans, period. That's it. They know this. I'm going to call it what it is. Let's not tiptoe around this. This is acting. They are acting and acting like they care because they have to check a box, right? And they're being caught. How this tunnel was discovered, let me tell your listeners how the actual tunnel was discovered, because
I was curious.
They didn't mean for this tunnel to be discovered. So they had to do some work. There was some work being done in this area by the border wall. They had to bring in a big old concrete truck. Well, if anybody knows, they have those big, it spins concrete in there. They're pretty doggone heavy. It's soft sand here. This is dirt road. This isn't like a paved road. So this is a dirt road that leads up to the border wall. So when the concrete truck drove in this particular area, it had to stabilize itself. So when it puts down their stabilizers, well, it sank. Weird. So then it sank again. So BORTEC came in. BORTEC is a very special division of the Border Patrol Agency. And so they came in and they started to drill because that's the protocol. So they drilled to find out what the heck was making this concrete truck sink. Well, the more they drilled, the more they kept having to drill. And they would go 30, 40, 50 feet, drill again, 30, 40, 50 feet, drill again, hit a pocket. So they understood. They were like, this is a huge tunnel system. That's how this was discovered. They did not want this tunnel to be discovered. But it was under our noses, in our face, at a highly trafficked area where we have sensors and cameras. We know when there's vibration in this area. Make no mistake. So this is why we know that there's no way that we did not know that this tunnel, somebody knew this tunnel was being built. 100% on our side. So we have a lot of problems and serious issues in this nation from a national security perspective. I'm going to talk about, federal government is responsible for immigration. Let's all agree on that. Mm-hmm. However, When it crosses over into national security implications, the states, the state constitutions can supersede the immigration because it's now national security.
Yeah.
This is
It's an
national
invasion. Yeah.
It's more than invasion. We can't say it's an invasion. It is an invasion, by the way. But I'm talking about real change, real policy, being able to call up National Guard, supersede the federal government, and close our borders down. This is what I'm talking about. And we have to do this legally. And the way that we do this legally is now this is national security crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Know this. Terrorists coming over our borders, fentanyl, drugs, weapons, all of the tunnels, which is breaching a sovereign nation from another country. This is national security implications. So Governor Abbott, unfortunately, California now, Arizona, stolen election, and New Mexico are all under Democratic rule. But if we have conservatives, or I don't care if you have a DI or an R behind your name, this is an American national security issue. So all of you governors out there, you need to look at your state constitution, and you need to supersede the federal government on immigration, because now this is national security. Call it what it is, like Abbott did. But don't just do a Band-Aid like Abbott's doing. Abbott, if you really want to make a dent, you send not only the National Guard down there, you send every single law enforcement officer down there. You set up temporary holding facilities, and you put every single illegal who's coming over this border into these temporary holding facilities, and then you put them back on aircraft to their origin, their country of origin, under the national security clause. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah, or you send them to Martha's Vineyard. One of the two. I'm just kidding.
That was wrong, and you know what? That was 100% photo op, right? That was staging. That was political theater, and I can't stand political theater. Yes, it showed the hypocrisy of the left. Immediately, it did. Just like busing all of these, like Abbott's doing, busing them to New York and Chicago and everywhere else. And what hypocrisy on the left of the Biden administration. Every time you put an illegal who's already been trafficked on a bus and shipping them into the United States in the interior, that's trafficking. So you're all part of the trafficking community, right? You're all shameful. No. First and foremost, the humanitarian thing to do is to close our borders down. Women and children, boys and girls are being raped, mutilated, sodomized. They're sold into this different trade industries, labor industry. And you know what? Some of them are actually being sent to the slaughterhouses, which are warehouses on the other side of the border that the cartels own, where they're murdered and killed and gutted for their organs and then sold on the black market. This is going on every day. And you don't have to take my word for it. Go to our videos, go to our different social media outlets. I have so many videos out there where I've gone live and I've showed dead bodies. You name it, I've seen it. And I'm angry. I'm angry because we have a Congress, we have a Senate, we have an administration who has totally turned their backs on the American people and have broken the Constitution and the laws of the land. And it's time we hold them all accountable, and it's time we get answers.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you mentioned that, when you reminded me of a recent article that somebody posted saying the coup we never knew. It's a Victoria Hansen, I think. Victor Davis Hansen. Sorry. Everybody knows Victor Davis Hansen, and he posted on townhall.com about this, and he mentioned this specifically. When did the coup happen that said we weren't going to enforce our laws and our borders? When did that happen? And I think that's calling into question. And by the way, you mentioned we have to do this legally. Impeachment's legal, and that might happen, especially if he's found to have allowed this to actually, if he's knowledgeable on what happened, and that's demonstrated in any way, he's toast, right? He's got to be, because that's the only way he'll teach a lesson to every single other person who's in a position of power, who's either aware of this or through benign neglect did nothing, or through direct intent did nothing. And there's even other groups, and you mentioned this at the beginning, and these people who are enabling this, the Border Patrol Council head, Brandon Judd, said that there's this constellation of nonprofits and non-governmental organizations that are contributing to what's happening at the border. And all the things that you mentioned makes these people and the people in the government just soulless ghouls for causing this to happen. Just the type of people that would be not somebody you'd want in charge of anything you give money to, but that you would investigate and put in jail. And that's what we're facing right now, is that all these folks are sort of feeding at a trough to make this happen. We've got to reverse it.
So NGOs, non-governmental, basically organizations is what that stands for. Catholic Charity, I'm going to name them. Catholic Charities, Bethany Christian Services, Lutheran Services, Methodist Services, the Mormons, Bethany Christians, all of these. They are all part of facilitating human trafficking. It is money laundering at its finest by our government. And if you're giving to any of these organizations, you are part of the problem, 100%. To the tune of, let me tell you how much Catholic Charities has profited off the backs of the plight of women and children being abused and raped and sold by the cartel. Because this is not about humanitarian for them. This is about big money, big dollars. By the way, your taxpayer funded dollars, because they get grants. Grants, where do the grants come from? They come from your back, right? Your hard-earned money, your taxpayer dollars. Catholic Charities just 2 years ago was $944 million is what they got. Now, fast forward the last 2 years, because they are the largest agency working at the border, specifically actually in Texas, McAllen, Brownsville area, everything. They have made over $1 billion in your taxpayer funded dollars, just that one charity alone. Now, multiply that all over the country with all of these contracts, hotels, the list goes on and on and on of how many billions and billions and billions of your taxpayer dollar that's taking away from your child's education, your child's health care, our infrastructure, our systems that are being literally sold out for this administration's not only buying votes, but bringing in terrorists to destroy our country. I could get into a whole nother area of what this is doing with open borders, that people need to understand the implications of this. They go deep. So do not give to these organizations. We know for a fact, we have video footage. There's human traffickers who work for the trafficking organizations, the cartels, right? The transnational terrorist organizations. They embed themselves into these agencies as volunteers, or some of them are paid. Some of them have very, very specific type of tattoos. When you're in this industry and you start learning and understanding who they are, who the players are, they have symbols on themselves. You start identifying these individuals. They all work for the individual. And I'm not saying every single person who works in these organizations are part of the criminal activity. Some people are just innocent and they're just trying to volunteer and they think they're doing the right thing. Stop. Everybody needs to exit from all of these organizations. You need to give to individuals or organizations that are doing it the right way. And I can name some. Women Fighting for America is one of those organizations that I'm a $0 CEO. Nobody on my team takes money. We're all volunteers. 100% of our money goes to the fight. It goes to being in the field, to exposing, to and uncovering. And by the grace of God, when we can rescue children and women, we do that ourselves as well. So you need to understand who the enemy is. There is a villain. The villain is right now this administration, the deep state, the cartels, China, Russia, Iran, World Economic Forum. I can name you who the villains are. We have a villain, but we also have heroes who can come in and who actually know how to stop this. And if our federal government refuses to do so, it is up to the people of the United States to do that. We have a constitution. And we can do this legally, but I'm going to ask everybody and all your listeners, Kevin, first and foremost, go get a copy of the Constitution. They're free. Go to Heritage Foundation. They'll send you a free copy of the Constitution of the United States of America. Read it, know it, understand your rights, understand the law. Another book to get, Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates. Every person should have that book, Doctrine of the Lesser
Magistrate. Yeah.
Third book I'm going to tell you to read, Fruit from the Poisonous Tree. Fruit from the Poisonous Tree. Those three things you should have. You need to read them, understand them, and only then can you act within the constraints of the law in our Constitution.
The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates. I found it on Amazon, and I'm going to post.
Don't stop at Amazon, please.
Okay.
Every time you shop at Amazon, you're funding the demise of our country.
Okay, if there's another source to get it, I just know
There's many
everybody.
other sources. You know what? Sometimes it takes a little bit harder digging. Please don't, anybody listening, we have to you have power in your wallet. Walmart, Amazon, Starbucks, they're all evil companies. They are literally funding the fight against you. We have to stop this. There's what is it? There's Mammoth stores. There's Mike Lindell's new store. We'll put that on our website. How about that? I'll have my team research and start. You can go directly to lessermagistratebook.com, lessermagistratebook.com, buy it directly from the source. Stop funding our enemy.
Yeah, and I think that that's why we need to constantly share info and spread this info so everybody can stay on top of this and know how they can act quickly. So it was lesser
Magistratebook.com.
lessermagistratebook.com. Yeah, we'll send people to your website, of course, to get all this, but I don't want people to forget before we get to the end of this. And I know what was the third book, just to mention that one?
Fruit from the Poisonous Tree.
Fruit from the Poisonous Tree.
Fruit from the Poisonous Tree.
And I think a lot of folks know that you have to kind of inform and feed your mind with the information that helps you see clearly what's going on. You spent today explaining what you've seen. I posted videos and links for people to go look at it themselves. And also, we've been talking about things that everybody's kind of aware of, but literally there isn't this massive push to do something about it yet. Now, you talked about contacting our members of Congress. I think that's a great time to do it. They just got sworn in, and there's a majority that can take an action on this, provided they hear from all of us. But we also have to continue the good work that you're doing. So I wanted to just ask if you could kind of, were there any other additional points you wanted to bring up? Otherwise, I want to make sure we point them to your website.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, Christy, what can you do? There's numerous things that we can do, right? The power is in our hands. I've named a couple of those tonight. You can actually go to our website. There's a 14-point plan that I have created with my years of experience, 14-point plan that's practical, easy to do, that you can do to save our republic called America, 14-point plan. There's also another, it's under the Take Action tab. Then there's another plan on there. It's called Battle Ready. And I'm going to teach you how to be battle ready. We are in a war. We are not only in a physical war, we are actually, even though you're not seeing the tanks roll through our streets yet, we are in a war. They declared war on us. We are also in a spiritual war. And we need to understand how to be battle ready. And so on my website, there is also a tab that says battle ready. I want you to get those two things. Take action, battle ready, print those out, share them on every platform that you have, every single one of them. You need to tell people to go and get this information. 2, the new Congress, they are going to be holding their first true meeting. They've already said where? At the border. As soon as we know where they're going to be descending at the border, I'm going to ask every single American who can physically get there, and it's take sacrifice. It's not going to be fun. You might have to take off work. It might cost you a little bit of money. And I know under this economy, it's hard, but there's nothing more important than saving the sovereignty of your nation and the future of your children and your children's children. If you're not understanding and seeing what's happening all over the world, because this news media here in America does not show you truth, you need to go outside of American news sources like I do. Right now, they are demonstrating and protesting in the streets of Paris and have been doing so for days. We're not talking a couple hundred. We're talking hundreds of thousands of people right now are walking through the streets of Paris protesting because they're starving to death in Paris. Starving to death in Paris because they can't afford food, clothing, fuel. This World Economic Forum, this government, our government, they all have one thing in common, the evilness, and that is to give you nothing, and you will like it. They want to put you in poverty. And make no mistake, America, it is going to be here at our doorstep. The reason why evil will prevail is because good men and women will sit by and do nothing and pretend it is not happening or be in denial that it will not happen here. The Jews thought that they would be okay. They were not. They said, if we just comply, if we just, well, this really couldn't be. There's no way they can. There's no way this will really happen. The people won't allow the government to do this. You know what? My ancestors were one of those Jews. I'm a Russian Jew on my mother's side. My great-grandfather and my grandpa fled Stalin, literally fled Stalin, left everything. We're in Ellis Island written. Some of my relatives weren't so lucky. They got marched off to the gulags, into the concentration camps, and then ultimately some of them died. There is a plan in place, whether you want to believe it or not. This is not conspiracy theory. The World Economic Forum themselves, if you don't believe me, go to the WEF website. They actually took this video down, but there's a couple websites, and I'm going to, again, have my team post this website. There's an app that you can use that goes back, and it saves. You can never, once it's out on the internet, it saves, I think, for 3 years, and you can go back and see what was posted and then taken down. The World Economic Forum had a video out just about 3 months ago. It was this beautiful infomercial of exactly what they were doing and what their plans are, because the evil and the devil always gives you the plan.
Yeah, they do. They
do. In this video, literally, it says you will have nothing, and this is on a global scale.
Yeah, you'll own nothing, and you'll like it.
You will have nothing, and you will like it.
Yeah.
Their goal is to have the elites and the worker bees. That is it. There will be no middleman. Why do you think all of the policies, everything that are driven, is to get rid of that middle guy, right? Which is the engine that drives everything.
Yeah.
That's what's coming here. Make no mistake, the COP27 summit, this ridiculous BS phony climate change crap, because that's what it is. There's just as many scientists who have been silenced, just like the COVID-19, like Fauci and all of them did, the WHO. They silenced the true doctors and the true science. Same thing with climate change. The earth has always been changing. Our weather patterns have always been changing. We had ice ages. We had heat ages. The dinosaurs died off. We had meteors hit our earth. Common sense, people, stop buying into this garbage. Who made billions and billions and billions of dollars off this climate change hoax since the 90s? Think about it. Who were the players who made the billions and billions of bucks while they fly around on their very expensive jets, giving off serious emissions, while they're telling you how to live your life, what to eat, what not to eat, that cows' farts somehow impact our environment and are destroying. They're telling you to eat crickets, plant-based foods. This is all a psychological warfare to put you into control. Understand your enemy. Read Chinese malignment. Start studying God. By God, America, God gave you a brain. Start using it for yourself. You will start connecting the dots, just like intelligent people who are not being shoved this narrative that's being fed. I'm sorry, Kevin, but this is just really important. I want everybody to understand what is truly at risk. Brazil, yes, they are taken to the streets. Look at what the Dutch farmers are still doing in the Netherlands.
People, a friend of our program, Michael Jan, has been covering, like in the Netherlands, what's going on.
I've been there. I was invited to go speak at the EU Parliament back in October. I met with world leaders at the European Union Parliament. I was privileged to be there. This is what's going on in the free Western world, folks. And there are protests in the streets all over the world that you're not seeing about this. Wake up, America. It is not too late. I've painted a horrible picture, a serious picture, but I promise you there's hope. But the only hope that there will be is if you get your head out of the sand and you understand we're a limited time and you have to act. We can't do it alone. The General Flynn's of the world, myself, the patriots are out here spending our own time, money at our own peril, at our own life. I have bounties on my head. I have to travel with 24-hour security posted outside of my house. I have massive next level security posted right now outside of my home to keep me safe and alive. That's not because I'm just a mom who's doing whatever. I'm uncovering serious stuff that has serious implications. And if I can do this, you can do it. I'm just asking you to donate money. I'm asking you to donate your time, and I'm asking you to engage and actively take action and get involved with our organization, or other organizations are doing the same.
So they can find you guys at WFFA.win.win. You're on Instagram at Women Fighting for America. On Facebook at WFFA in America. Also the same on Twitter, WFFA in America. And you have a Rumble channel as well, Women Fighting for America with Christie Hutcherson. That's how people can find you, and they can donate at the website. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us here today, Christie. We look forward to hearing further reports in the future and having you back, because we know that this is something that we've got to keep pounding away on and make sure people are aware. It's a difficult thing to hear that this is happening to our country, and that the people that are supposedly entrusted with running it are inflicting this and enabling this on us. But there's hope, because there's people like you fighting back, trying to get us the information, and patriots all over the country that are willing to help make it happen and support it. So keep us informed. Thank you again for joining us here tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. And I know we only have just a few more minutes. Where you were saying that, if I may indulge and say one other thing, it's not a mistake that in this omnibus bill that there was $87 billion given to the FBI to create a new FBI facility. We are going to be labeled domestic terrorists. There is no mistake. That's what they're going after. I know myself. I was in January 6th. There was no insurrection at all. It was definitely a operative. We call it a operation by our CIA and our FBI. I spoke on January 5th, and I was with the President of the United States on January 6th. Make no mistake, I've been under investigation. It's just a matter of time, but I will fight and I will not be silenced. I'm willing to take a bullet for my nation because I love her that much. Freedom doesn't come free. Freedom comes at a price. We've had good men and women who have fought hard all the way back to our founding fathers. Our founding fathers knew it best. They signed the Declaration of Independence it was a death warrant sign when they signed that for themselves and
our
their
lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
That's exactly right. And in the Constitution, I'm going to leave you with this. In the Constitution, when you have a government who no longer serves the people of the United States, who circumvents the Constitution and who does not follow natural law, it is the right and it is the duty. Know what that word is. It's your duty to replace that government with a righteous government. And we can do so legally, peacefully with the Constitution. That's what we need to do. So please, America, engage. WFFA.win. You can text FIGHT to 91776. Together, we can save our country. God bless you guys, and God bless our great country.
Text FIGHT to
91776.
Got it. I just added it to the feed. Thank you again, Christie, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who watched here tonight. Please share this with everyone you can. They really do need to hear this information. They're probably not getting anywhere else. And of course, Captive Audience is the show where you get to hear opinion and news that you can't find anywhere else in the state of Oregon. We look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow night. It should be David and myself for another episode. We may be talking about some news that broke here in Salem. Some crazy people are trying to put an end to commercial aviation in and out of Salem. That's right, climate change activists. But it seems to be the same issue repeating on multiple nights, manifesting in different ways. But whatever you do, get into the fight, do what Christie said, and we can actually turn this around and save our country. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow night on the Captive Audience. Good night.